Ever since my mom died, hospitals have made me anxious. But this story isn't about my mom. It's not even really about hospitals. This is about my issues with idealism and goddamn talk show host Ricky Lake. Before I gave birth, not a single one of my friends who'd had kids had told me their birth story. My mom had 3 children. My sister had 5, but no one talked about it. My first pregnancy was 2 years after Ricky Lake's documentary about hospital birth, The Business of Being Born. In case you haven't seen it, it's a film about the cycle of Pitocin, epidurals, and C-sections, and how hospitals push women through childbirth like a conveyor belt instead of letting them birth the way nature intended. Ricky Lake told me that every woman has the goddess-given ability to have a beautiful, natural birth in a stone hot tub, on a grassy knoll, or even just grabbing a tree branch and squatting down in the woods. My body was made for childbirth. So my husband and I planned for a home birth because we believed it would be natural and safe and beautiful. We spent months preparing, and then my due date finally came, and then it went. Until one night, I felt a strange pluck like a guitar string, and my water broke all over the floor. We called the midwife and scurried around getting ready, and then we just waited and waited and waited. After 24 hours with no contractions, my midwife advised a long walk. So, because we lived in Brooklyn at the time, we decided to take the mile walk to the grocery store and grab some food. I was in the middle of the food town when the contractions began. This lady passed by as I was squatting next to my grocery cart while my husband shopped for frozen pizza. She was like, "Are you okay?" And I was like, "Oh, I'm fine. I'm just in early labor. It's fine." The mile walk back home was not so fine. At home, I settled in for the hard part, the moving around, pretending to breathe my way through the most agonizing, stabbing pain I have ever experienced, ever. We didn't know at the time that my son was face up, which causes intense back pain and longer labor. While I cried and moaned, my husband and doula brought me water and food that I was too nauseated to eat, and my midwife sat in the corner in the rocking chair, knitting. After every rise and fall of pain, I would look to her for a cue that we were getting somewhere, that we were just like accomplishing something, and she just calmly kept knitting. I wanted to stab her in the eye with those knitting needles. 16 hours and a lovely scarf later, it was finally time to start pushing. Pushing was supposed to be when I felt some relief, some control. It meant I was near the end. But after all those hours of not eating, I had no energy left for pushing. And I realized in that moment something that I've said to myself 1,000 times since becoming a mom. No one else is going to do this. I have to do this. For 2 hours, I pushed against a brick wall of pain. Sometimes I almost passed out until, with no warning or any change in sensation, the midwife suddenly held up this giant 9-pound baby. And I just stared at him and I thought, "Who is that? And where did it come from?" She immediately laid him on me for some semi-conscious bonding time while she began poking and prodding and stitching. I begged her to please just leave it all alone. Just stop touching. It turns out, pushing my son's head out in a posterior position had dragged my entire cervix along with it, and she was trying to shove everything back into place. Yeah. The beautiful part about home birth is that you get to lay in your own bed with your newborn and your partner. The doula and midwife clean everything up and they make you snacks, but then they leave. So it was just my husband, a newborn baby, and nearly unconscious me, all alone in the middle of the night. When I was struggling to nurse, we were alone. When I was in so much physical pain after 44 hours of labor and just couldn't get out of bed to even go to the bathroom, we were alone. Just two exhausted, brand new parents. My body felt like shredded meat. But I'd done it, all natural. No hospital, no drugs. I was a goddess. But then 2 weeks went by, and I still couldn't nurse. And my son didn't gain any weight, and the pediatrician told me he was failing to thrive. And I had to supplement. After everything we had done to bring my son into the world naturally, my first trip to the store was to buy formula. And I stood in line with my screaming, starving baby, and I was crushed. Ricky Lake had convinced me that I was naturally an expert and had everything I needed to give birth to my son in a natural and safe way. And when it didn't apply to me, I felt like a failure. I now know that if I'd had a C-section then, and with my second, I wouldn't have had to have a hysterectomy 4 years ago. Idealism is fine until you can't let go. I don't tell this story to say that home birth is good or bad. I tell this story because I wish someone had convinced me there's no one right way to give birth. And I wish I had never watched that damn documentary. That's why I tell my story. And maybe next time, I'll tell you about my second home birth, which was even worse.